The Rangers and Lightning are trending in opposite directions. The Blackhawks want to become the New Jersey Devils, and rest in peace to Larry Brooks.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Locked On NHL. I am Nick Zararis, the host of Locked On Oilers. That is my good friend and the co-host of Locked On Penguins, Hunter Hodies. We want to welcome everyone to this edition of Locked On NHL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. We have a whole lot to get to today, Hunter. We are going to start out with talking about the Rangers and Lightning, who coming out of a really entertaining game that was drunk for about a good half hour of it, including Andrei Vasilevskiy tripping over his own feet, trending in opposite directions. We will pivot in our second segment to the Devils, who are in first place in the Metropolitan division, picking up an overtime win against the Blackhawks. The Blackhawks, who are feisty, they're pesky. The emergence of Connor Bedard as a bona fide superstar. And then we will tie a bow on today's show, paying tribute to the late Larry Brooks, who passed away after a brief battle with cancer. And getting on into it, the Rangers are enigmatic, to say the least. This is a team that I struggle to get a good feel for because you have games like the last two, Monday against Nashville and then last night against Tampa Bay, where the puck's going in the net even when it shouldn't. The puck's going in over goalies falling over themselves. It's getting deflected in. They are getting golden opportunities that don't go in. They're getting stupid ones to go in. And then they have games where scoring 2 goals feels absolutely impossible. There will be, and I'm getting ahead of this now, there is going to be an extreme amount of spin zone. That Trocheck coming back is why they magically started scoring goals. He definitely helped, but that alone is not the reason they've scored 12 goals over their last 2 games.
No, it's not. It's definitely part of it. But, Artemi Panarin, Nick, had 4 assists last night. He was all over the ice. He was tremendous. Adam Fox also added a couple of assists. How about Will Cooley? By the way, he continues to produce really well for the Rangers this year. 2 goals last night for him. You also got Alexis Lafreniere getting on the score sheet, JT Miller. And that's big also for Lafreniere, Nick, because I feel like he's really struggled to start the year. Just hasn't. It feels like to me, as someone on the outside, he hasn't been the same player over the last year and change. So I feel like if the Rangers really want to get going, he's going to have to be a big part of that, in my opinion.
So going off of that, let me jump in real quick on that, because the thing with Lafreniere is the underlying numbers up until this week were outstanding. Really good underlying numbers, and the consensus, of course, you are somebody who attended the church of Mike Sullivan. The offense is coming. It'll get here. We're going to keep doing what we're doing, and the offense is going to come. He's picked up 8 points, and I think it's his last 4 games, something along those lines. To even out the production, he's at 12 points through 18 games, which is pretty reasonable. The big thing that jumped out to me last night, and I'll throw it back to you on this note, reunifying that Trocheck, Panarin, Lafreniere line, which was the driving force of their President's Trophy season 2 years ago, was a top 5 line in all of the entire NHL in terms of actual goals and the underlying numbers also being outstanding. And that return of Trocheck gives the lineup a bit more dimension, because now you have the flexibility. We can play Cooley on the third line or on the first line. We can ease Gabe Perreault into this a little bit more, and that's what happened last night. The Rangers, and Mike Sullivan said it after the game, being that Tampa Bay was loading up Point, Kucherov, and Gensel on the first line, he didn't want to put Perreault out there against those guys, so I get it. But now with Trocheck back in the fold, you have a bit more flexibility with how you want to deploy your lineup. And at the very least, the Rangers are a lot more interesting than they were, say, a week ago.
Yeah, and it gives them obviously a lot more center depth, which they have desperately needed with him out of the lineup. Even with him in the lineup, Nick, I still think they're short a center, but obviously, again, with him back, it makes everything a lot better. Shifting gears to Tampa a little bit. They had a bit of a slow start. They crawled back out of it, but you look at the standings right now, Nick, and we're about 2 weeks away from Thanksgiving. 8-6-2, 18 points. And I know they were without McDonagh last night. They're without Hedman, but it feels like so far something just hasn't felt right with them to start this season. And we're still, again, a couple weeks away from Thanksgiving, which is like that first big benchmark of if you're in a playoff spot at that time, there's a good chance you're going to stay in a playoff spot for the rest of the season. But even with Vasilevskiy healthy, wasn't good in this game. That, you said the first period, honestly, the first 20, 25 minutes of that game was just absolutely nuts. It was almost a final score in the first period, 4-3 after one period. But they just haven't felt right this year. I'm not seeing the typical Lightning team that we see during the regular season. I'm sure part of it is also due to age. Some of these players are getting a bit older, but I still think they could be a little bit deeper up front. Again, I know they're battling some injuries right now, but I don't know, Nick. I just don't like the vibes going on right now down in Tampa. I know they've won 7 of their last 10, but just something still feels off with them right now.
So there's the scene in, I think it's the third Indiana Jones movie, where Indy says it's not the years, it's the miles. But with Tampa Bay, it's both. It's the years and the miles. This is an old team. There isn't a massive influx of young guys on the horizon. This is a team that is as leveraged for the exact moment as they possibly can be. They boast some of the most high-end players in the entire league. There are few teams in the NHL that can match the raw firepower of Point, Gensel, and Kucherov all on one line. Those are all elite players who are amongst the top 5 to 10 guys at their respective positions in most conversations. Right now, Vasilevskiy sitting at an .892 save percentage. I think that will come around. I think goalies at large have been very slow to get going this year. League-wide save percentage is at .891, generally
we talked
speaking.
about that last week. Yep.
Yeah, generally speaking, those bell cow guys, the Vasilevskiy, Sorokin, Shesterkins, the guys who are going to make 55, 60 starts, the more they play, the better they're going to get. So I'm not ready to say Vasilevskiy is ineffective, but it's definitely something to keep monitoring. And then the other point, and I know no McDonagh, no Hedman last night, their 2 best puck-moving D, but the other question I have for Tampa, as good as that forward group is, can their D pitch in anything as far as transition play? Can we get the puck up the ice quicker? Can we sustain offensive zone time? Can we contribute offense from the point? Because as good as they are defensively, and they still are an above-average defensive team on the season when you look at the shots against, the scoring chances against, it's not enough to just prevent offense. Your defense in 2025 needs to actively be contributing to your chance creation. And like I said, no Hedman, no McDonagh, definitely their 2 best defensemen out last night against the Rangers, but definitely something worth keeping an eye on. And then the other thing, if you're Jon Cooper, are you going to keep rolling those 3 guys together on one line, or are you going to split it up to try and distribute your offense a little bit more evenly and try and find some more offense? Because right now, the Lightning are below the league average in terms of goals scored and goals conceded so far. So clearly, even though they are winning, something isn't adding up, to your point. And I do think it's a little bit of everything. It's no one silver bullet here. It's the goaltending should probably be 10 save percentage points better, at least. That should be a 900, 905 goalie tandem. Their power play could probably stand to be a little bit better. They need a little bit more depth scoring, because once you get past that top 6, it's pretty light. It's a few different things. But I will say this, if anybody is going to figure it out, it's Jon Cooper, or we get a very weird situation at the end of the year reminiscent of what happened in Pittsburgh with Mike Sullivan. Now, that's not to say Jon Cooper's going to get fired or anything, but if Jon Cooper said, I want to take a year off, that wouldn't shock me at the end of the day. He's been in that job a long time. He's got the Olympics to worry about as well.
Yeah.
It's a good thing from time to time for you as a great coach to move on for you, not necessarily for the team, but you look at Bruce Cassidy in Vegas, those types of guys. Hell, we could talk about your boy Mike Tomlin. Maybe it's time for him to find a new landing spot, but that's a real thing. The great coach can eventually run out of chips to play with the same group over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, again, we just saw that with the Penguins here. Like, it was obviously it was time for Mike Sullivan to pursue a different job. He did. The Penguins moved on, and look how solid they have been to start the year, Nick. They're still top 3 in the Metro right now, and we're 2 weeks to Thanksgiving, and I still want to see if they can keep this up. They've had a little bit of a dip in play. As for Lightning, if they still don't figure it out, Julian Brisball is going to look around the trade market. We all know the saying, F them draft picks. That literally is Julian Brisball. He does not care about draft picks as long as he has Kucherov, Point, Gensel, Hedman, Vasilevskiy, etc. on the team. And you still look at some of the injury situation right now, Nick. Cirelli is day-to-day. Even Hagel is day-to-day a little bit as well. Like there's some dudes battling some injuries here. Nick Paul is on IR. So, again, even outside of Hedman and McDonagh, some of their forwards are nicked up. So once they're able to get a bit healthier, I'm gonna be curious to see if this changes. Again, they were able to overcome a little bit of the slow start, but I still feel like they need a little bit more depth in their bottom six, even when healthy. And I do think they need to go shopping for a defenseman on the trade market, even when Hedman and McDonagh are healthy as well. I trust Jon Cooper to figure this out. I think they're going to keep rolling that top line. I don't really think they have a choice right now, especially with some of their forwards just a little bit banged up right now. Once some of them get back, for example, like once they have their full healthy 12 forwards that they can roll out, I think you might see Cooper experiment a little bit, maybe put one of those three players on the top line a little further down the lineup to spread the wealth a little bit. But right now, I don't think he has a choice. I'm just curious to see if they figure this out because, I felt like going into the season, they had a really big opportunity, man. Barkov's out for the entire regular season. I felt like the Atlantic was wide open. It still is. But so far, and we're still in mid-November, haven't taken advantage of that yet. So I want to see if they can really get rolling a little bit here. But hey, how about we move forward to the Devils game last night? Because that was a lot of fun.
You set it up very nicely there. It's great. The more competitive teams there are in the NHL, and coming up next on today's edition of Locked On NHL, we're going to talk about how the Blackhawks go from where they are now to where they would like to be in the context of the team who beat them last night, the New Jersey Devils. When I'm hydrated, everything works better. My focus, my energy, my mood, even my skin. That's why I've been using Drip Drop. It's doctor-developed hydration that keeps me running at full power no matter what my day looks like. Drip Drop isn't your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading brands using a science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of top college and pro teams. I got my pouch sitting over here on my desk. I already finished my water bottle for the day before I went on my morning run. It is a nice pick-me-up to add to your water. It tastes good, doesn't taste synthetic, doesn't taste fake. It tastes like actual juice. It is a really welcome refresher. Everybody who's constantly hunting for that sweet treat, that 3 o'clock coffee, Drip Drop makes it happen and hydrates you in the process. It helps me feel sharper, calmer, and honestly, just better overall. Right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off their first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 20% off. Stock up now for that winter bulk and keep your body and mind performing at their best with Drip Drop. Thank you so much to everyone who's hanging out on this edition of Locked On NHL, making Locked On NHL their first listen of the day, and everyone who's helped make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. So, Hunter, my friend, the Devils, in spite of some pretty questionable underlying numbers, in spite of some subpar goaltending, keep finding ways to win hockey games, which brings up the natural binary question. Are the Devils getting lucky, or is this a sign that because they can outplay their metrics, they really are this good? I can understand an argument for both ways. You point to the explosive production of Dawson Mercer and Timo Meier, in addition to Jack Hughes, who we expected from, Jesper Bratt, who we expected from. And the Devils are getting depth offense in a way they haven't in years past. So they have been able to overcome maybe some of the circumstantial environmental factors. And then you get weird things like last night, Simon Nemec picking up a hat trick from a defenseman, somebody who's been in and out of the lineup, somebody who can't really stick all that consistently. But if you have guys who are capable of dropping hat tricks from the blue line, jumping in and out of the lineup, that tells me you got a pretty deep group back there. And we've heard that speculation now for the better part of the last 4 or 5 months. The Devils know they have too many defensemen. They have some questions about who's going to be here long term and what do you do to potentially set up the runway for Quinn Hughes. I just had to get that in there just for the context of the episode. But what do you do if you're the Devils in this spot? Because right now, it feels like they have more to get out of this group, especially from a metrics perspective. But if they keep winning hockey games, I'm not particularly sure Sheldon Keefe's going to care they're getting out high danger chanced and out expected gold.
It's funny, I watched the Devils for a full game over the weekend when the Penguins played them. I thought the Penguins brutally outplayed them for that entire game, but that was when their goaltending was great. Jake Allen stood on his head for the entire 65 minutes. And you know what? Jake Allen has outplayed Jacob Markstrom this year. I mean,
yes,
you
for sure.
Look at the numbers, Nick. Jake Allen has a .914 save percentage. Markstrom is only at .870 so far this year. They need to get Markstrom going more because, you just signed that extension. when he is on, he is their number one. But Allen is kind of, in my opinion, taking the reins a little bit. It's kind of been a little bit of a 1A, 1B, but I feel like Allen is the 1A right now, and he's playing great for them. So they're getting good goaltending from him, but I still want to see more from Markstrom. Jack Hughes, he's an MVP candidate. We can talk about him forever. He's been great. Dawson Mercer, Timo Meier producing like this. You mentioned it because I know Devils fans have complained about him ever since acquiring him, Nick, just because he hasn't lived up to par. So far this season, though, I mean, he's been great. So I don't really think they have anything to complain about. He's almost at a point per game. Jesper Bratt, we all expect that. Even with Vernico, he shared 12 points in 17 games. I think the goal scoring is going to come. We all know how good defensively he is, but I still think from a goal scoring perspective, they could use a little bit more there. I think this team is legit, especially if they, keep getting the production from throughout their lineup. They keep, getting the production from the back end. We all know how great Luke Hughes is when he's on. Dougie Hamilton, he's been a little banged up again, Nick, but, when healthy, he's also great. But biggest thing for me with this team, they just got to get Markstrom going. I know their underlying numbers are a little bit not that good, but when they're on, this is one of the fastest teams in the league that causes matchup nightmares. And you've also seen that for a lot of the season. You mentioned Nemec. That hat-trick goal was tremendous last night. And, they were able to find a way to win that game when it looked like they potentially were not going to. To me, that's a sign of a team that is a contender for this year. So, this team is real good, man. I'm curious to see if they can sustain this for the whole year and into the playoffs, but I really like a lot of what I'm seeing. And from Chicago, I'll say this about the Blackhawks. After how bad, especially these last couple of years have been, I feel like this year has been such a breath of fresh air for that team, and especially the fan base that has been waiting for them to get back. You're seeing the arena there. Feels like it's being sold out. I don't have the data in front of me, but last night looked like a pack house. Connor Bedard is off to one hell of a start, making a really strong case to be on Team Canada this year. I mean, Nick, the numbers that he's putting up, 10 goals, 26 points in 17 games. He's turning players into pylons whenever he's on the ice. I am really curious to see if he makes Team Canada for next year. If he doesn't, he's going to make it for the World Cup and then I'm sure the next Team Canada roster. But he's very much in the conversation for that and for the Hart Trophy this year. I mean, he's been one of the best players in the league. And it's, we had this discussion last year when I think it was the TNT panel that was complaining about Connor Bedard. And it's like, dude, look who we had last year. Like, you got to cut him a break. And this year he's producing. And I'm seeing a team that's having fun. That's what I really see. That's the biggest difference this year compared to last year. They are a team that is having fun. Sam Lafferty with that amazing toe drag last night. Didn't know he had that in him going back to his days as a Penguin. Frank Nazar, he's been tremendous for the Blackhawks. So, again, I know they're still not a playoff team yet, in my opinion, but they are definitely a lot better this year compared to last year. I didn't fully see that part coming either, just because when I looked at the roster, I was like, a lot of question marks, but they're proving me wrong so far, and they're also a lot of fun to watch.
So 2 things real quick on the Devils. The Devils are sitting at a 98.4 PDO, which leads you to believe they will get a little bit more luck. Their shooting's a little low, and their save percentage is a little low. And then on Bedard, the speed has gone up. He definitely looks notably faster, which is giving him more opportunities. And it gives you an idea of the capacity and the reality these young guys face. Because last year, if you'll recall, Bedard was 19 years old, second year in the league. And the conversation was already turning to, wow, this guy isn't as good of a first overall pick as we thought he was going to be. And he was almost a point per game player on the worst team in the league. He was 75 points in 70-something games last year, guy, and it was there. And the one thing that jumped out at me in doing a cursory search of his numbers, he's got 26 points in 17 games so far. He's averaging an eighth of a shot more per game. So every 2 games, he's getting one more shot. And that doesn't sound like a lot, one more shot on goal for every 2 games. But think about how many scoring chances don't result in shots on goal. So that means more offensive zone time. That means more game control. Throw in the fact that to start the year, he's shooting almost 19%. So 1 extra shot every 2 games, if 1 out of every 5 of those goes in, that's where you're seeing the juice numbers come into play. That shooting percentage will come down. He won't sit at 19% all year, but if he becomes a 14, 15% shooter, that's not out of the question that he's one of the 10, 15 best shooters in the NHL.
And his shot like is explosive. The puck is just explodes off his stick. It's one of the more unique releases in the NHL when you really see it live.
Yeah, and it's not that it's in like a deceptive type of way, that the way Kucherov's it or Pasternak's is. Bedard is just, it explodes. It flies off the stick. And having that extra wrinkle now where his skating has improved to the degree that he can use his speed to create space to set up that shot, it's made him a significantly more dangerous player. And it's unlocked something for the Blackhawks. I'll be curious to see where his point total ultimately ends up settling for the year. But this has been about as good a start as you can imagine. They were talking about it on the broadcast for the Oiler game last night. You think about it. You've still got McDavid and McKinnon hanging around in the top 10 of points. You still got Sid and Malkin hanging around up there. And then you got the children. You got Bedard and Celebrini up there, Leo Carlson as well. We are at a really interesting inflection point in the crossing of generations. We are going to take our second and final break on today's edition of Locked On NHL. When we come back, we will pay tribute to the late Larry Brooks, one of the great columnists in the history of hockey. The NBA is back, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game, or if you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to huge fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a bigger payout. Tonight in the NBA, Raptors Cavs is at least tentatively interesting. Heat Knicks, not a lot of games on the slate tonight, but you can check in on Wemby and the Spurs against the Warriors, who are modest 2-point favorites on home court. FanDuel keeps every game exciting and makes it so every game has extra juice. And right now, FanDuel is giving all new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head on over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you so much to everyone who is hanging out on this Thursday edition of Locked On NHL, and ending the show on a bit of a sour note. Woke up to the news today. Larry Brooks of the New York Post, who's been covering or working in hockey for 40 years now, 30 plus years at the Post, 10 years in the Devils organization in their front office. And that type of guy just doesn't exist anymore. You will not have a newspaper columnist who stays at one place writing about the same thing for 30 years ever again. With the way media is going, with the way the landscape is trending, people don't even go to college to become writers anymore. You have to have writing ability. You have to be able to be on camera. You have to be able to do podcasts. You have to be able to be a personality on top of being able to do the reporting. And then you read Larry Brooks and you can feel the ink coming off of the page when you're scrolling on your phone. You read the candid way in which he's blunt. You know, in later years, you and I have definitely exchanged some texts about his columns being a bit out there, maybe a bit out of touch. But then once or twice a season, he throws 97 on the corner and just calls a spade a spade. And you're reminded of why a columnist exists. It's not just being able to opine about what's happening. It's having the connections and the contacts to be able to source what you are writing, and then being in the same place for such an extended period of time. You have an innate understanding of not just the team, the operators on the team. You understand your market. You understand what your audience expects of you. And guys like that don't exist anymore. And it's going to be impossible to replace that, because there aren't guys coming out of a time machine from 1968 to write for newspapers anymore. That will never happen again.
Right. And the thing with Larry Brooks is, if you disagreed with him, okay,
he would let you know.
Whatever. Yeah. But no one can deny how great of a writer he was. Like, he was never afraid of going at the league whenever he wanted. And those were my favorite columns of his, Nick, when he would just dump on the NHL. As you said, throw 97 on the corner. It's like, this was a beautiful, well-written article. All your points that you made were great. But like, no one else, I feel like, around the NHL as a writer was able to do it like he could. I always think back to, if you watch those videos on YouTube of him and Tortorella going at it, that's some of the best content from those days with the Rangers, was when Tortorella and him were just going at it in those media scrums. And But again, Larry was just one of one as an NHL writer, man. Like, it didn't matter if it was about the Rangers, the Devils. I saw him do some stuff on the Islanders sometimes, or even league wide. He was awesome. And it sucks, man. This one really sucks because writers out there, they don't do it like he did, man. Like, they don't have the capacity to, write a column slamming the NHL in a very articulate way. And yeah, like, he was great.
So one thing I did want to touch on in this conversation, you mentioned it, the disagreements with John Tortorella.
Yeah.
And it's one of the difficult skills to have as somebody who is in the room, because you are going to have to take tactical pushes at times. You are going to have to say, you're not doing a good job, and I need to write about that. And you need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. You need to look the people you wrote about in the eye, and they get the right to say what they want to say back to you. Now, Tortorella was out of line with what he had said, and Brooks was right to kind of scoff at him. And are you threatening me? Do you want to fight? That's the way you react to that. And we don't see that often anymore, combativeness, because there's been such a massaging of what journalism is, especially in sports, because it's so predicated on access now. But those holdovers, those guys from the 70s and the 80s who have spent 30 years in locker rooms, they're not the type like us who grew up writing on the fan-sided blogs or are doing the YouTube shows where we do the shows without access because it's hard to come by. Brooks's credibility entirely stems from the fact that everybody in the league trusts him. Everybody in the league around, you look at the outpouring of anecdotes and stories. And I wanted to pull one up earlier because Vince, who covers the Rangers, pulled up an anecdote about one of the last times he talked to Larry a few weeks ago. And he had said, I've gotten grateful to know him. He grew up to embrace the goofy bonds of being a beat writer. One of our final conversations came at the end of training camp when I asked him how many years he thought he had left. Larry looked at me like I was crazy and rhetorically asked, what else would I do? There are not people like that anymore. Everybody is constantly angling for that next job, for that Substack, for that podcast. And there aren't enough people who look at that as the pinnacles. That is for people like me who grew up in this market in the greater New York area. That was an aspirational target. Now, unfortunately, my question, and I was talking about this in my group chat today, will the New York Post even hire a hockey columnist? Or are they going to say, well, we can't replace Larry, so we're going to phase that job out as an excuse to not pay someone to do it? That's the other thing. Columnists are expensive. They don't write every day. They do all of the work. They're traveling, they're covering the team, but they don't write every day. So their return on investment isn't as straightforward as the daily columnist who writes the game stories. Will the Post have a hockey columnist again? Well, no one reads hockey. We can't justify the expenses for this. And unfortunately, that's where we're at in media right now.
I agree with you. And I still wonder if they maybe have Molly potentially do some of that job a little bit, Nick. Speaking of tributes, she wrote a really good one this morning. I retweeted it on my Twitter if you guys want to go check it out. It was a really great, heartfelt story from Molly, who worked with Larry for a long time. So if you guys want to go check that out, definitely do. But I still wonder, Nick, if she's going to do a little bit of his job or if they'll have it combine it with her and someone else at the New York Post. But still, someone like that, when you really dive deeper, someone like that is irreplaceable. Like when you have his writing style with the takes that he has, the sources
and
that
the connections and the sources and the history and the 30 years.
All of that, and you combine it all, no one person can replace that. And again, it sucks because this is a really tough one for the sports media.
Yeah, man. We don't get a lot of guys like this anymore who have that cachet, and it's really hard to build credibility. That's the parting thought I want to leave you guys with as we wrap up today's show. It's really easy to lose your credibility, to sell out, to give up, to become a cliche. And it's really difficult. It is really challenging to stay authentic and true to yourself. And the landscape isn't as conducive to that anymore. I definitely understand. but the hockey world is worse off without Larry Brooks writing about it. So
he kept it real, man. Anytime he wrote a column, he kept it real 100%. He didn't BS anyone on any of his columns, no matter if it was about the Rangers, the NHL Department of Player Safety, anything around the league. He told it how it was to him with his connections, with his writing style and everything. And someone like that can't be replaced. So my thoughts are with his family and friends. Just a really, really tough and awful loss for the hockey community.
Yeah, it's a tough one, man. It's a real tough one. That will do it for today's edition of Locked On NHL. Hunter and I want to thank everyone that made Locked On NHL their first listen of the day. If you could be so kind, take a second, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts or over on YouTube. Go read Molly Walker's column of writing about her experiences working with Larry over the last couple of years. Really good stuff, and the type of stuff that reminds you that there are good people out there in the world, but you got to find them, and that's the tricky part. Hunter and I will talk to you guys next week. Until then, everyone enjoy the hockey.